There was an interesting article from PFF, and my take on this will gain me exactly 0 friends. But I do think that it is interesting and worth talking about because the Kansas City Chiefs at this point, I think we all agree, feel kind of destitute with what it is that they have been, the cards that they have been dealt this off season. Now, when we get into it, an article titled Every Team's Best Trade Asset Ahead of the 2025 NFL Draft. The 2025 NFL offseason has already featured some wildly unexpected trades, including Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Laramie Tunsil. I think that there's one from the Kansas City Chiefs that kind of ranks among those unexpected trades, Joe Thuney, but if we're not counting the Chiefs, we're not counting the Chiefs. More will assuredly be on the way, especially as the 2025 NFL Draft nears. The days leading up to the draft and even the event itself can serve as a natural incubator of player movement. In recent years, trades of Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Brown, Marquise Brown, and John Franklin Myers have occurred during the window of the draft itself. With the highly anticipated event roughly a month away, let's take stock of every squad's best trade asset if a deal were to be completed in that span. Note that these players are at least plausible trade assets, meaning someone like Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be included. Very important to note that. However, I do believe that there's a little bit more into what constitutes a tradable asset than what it is that this article is insinuating. However, the first time I read this article, I kind of agreed. I kind of agreed with the fact that they list for the Kansas City Chiefs as cornerback Jaylen Watson. And then I thought about it a little deeper, and I don't think I agree anymore. But to give the article its credit, this is the reason why they list Jaylen Watson. The Chiefs are known for keeping their core starters in place, particularly on defense. But this offseason has been fraught with change. That includes at cornerback with the signing of Kristian Fulton, which might not leave a clear future for a player like Watson. Watson's 2024 season was limited by a broken leg, but he was a standout cover man with a 71.6 PFF coverage grade. However, Kansas City has several other young cornerbacks, including Jamari Conner, who is more of a slot option, Joshua Williams, and Najee Johnson. All of Watson, Williams, and Johnson will be free agents in 2026, but Watson would be the most valuable if traded. Now, of that trio, I think absolutely Jaylen Watson is the most tradable asset. He would bring the highest returns. And they're right. After this season, you don't have Jaylen Watson under contract. After this season, you don't have Joshua Williams or Najee Johnson under contract. After this season, you don't have Kristian Fulton under contract. So, heading into next offseason, cornerback is going to be a point of emphasis. But we know here in Kansas City that this actually plays into this article's argument because Brett Veach loves to be ahead of the game. So it is unlikely that Brett Veach lets this season go by when next season, not only will he have all of these players, Kristian Fulton, Joshua Williams, Najee Johnson, Jaylen Watson, all playing the cornerback position. Jamari Conner's kind of a defensive back, but all playing the cornerback position as free agents. He's going to address something now. Brett Veach is not going to wait, but there is another position for which, that's the right one, for which the Kansas City Chiefs have a very valuable trade asset who is not going to be here after the 2025 season. which is to say, maybe he will be, but he's only on contract for this one season. But trade bait can mean a couple of things. Maybe it's a guy who doesn't start for you, Jaylen Watson. The Chiefs will probably start Trent McDuffie and Christian Fulton. I do think Christian Fulton is probably a better down-to-down cornerback than Jaylen Watson, but really you start three corners in the NFL most of the time, don't you? But in addition to being someone who doesn't necessarily start for your team, maybe he's a guy for whom you have a backup and you would get something in return, right? So you can have the guy that's sitting on the bench and you're not getting anything out of him, so you might as well trade him. Or he's the guy keeping someone else on the bench that you could trade and get something out of them. So a starter with a really good backup versus a really good backup and you're keeping the starter. Trey Smith is generally accepted to be worth a second-round pick, and he's here on a one-year contract. He's generally accepted to be worth a second-round pick on that one-year contract because the team to whom you're trading him can renegotiate their own contract. Now, it's kind of a downside because you don't have a long-term deal in place for Trey Smith that the other team would be inheriting from you, but it's also kind of an upside because it means that you're not going to overpay Trey Smith based on someone else's mistakes. So, for the sake of argument, let's just pretend that the Chiefs traded Trey Smith for, just as an example, I have no idea who holds this pick, but we'll say the 55th pick. We'll just say the 55th pick. Trey Smith is making $23.4 million this season. So, in this scenario, if the Chiefs were to trade Trey Smith for the 55th pick, they would free up $23.4 million in cap space. It's a lot of stuff you can do with $23.4 million, especially when you've already made the Patrick Mahomes move. And in addition, they would have the 31st overall pick, the 55th overall pick, the 63rd overall pick, the 66th overall pick, and the 133rd overall pick. Now, they have 3 additional 7th rounders as well, but those are more of a crapshoot, right? You don't know exactly what it is you're going to be able to get in the 7th round, but 5 picks. 5 picks in 4 rounds? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 picks. Why is that not right? 5 picks in 4 rounds. A first rounder, a second rounder, a second rounder, a third rounder, a third rounder, and a fourth rounder. I have missed something. Is that not correct? 31, 55, 63, 66, 133. Okay, so I missed something. But it'll be 6 picks in 4 rounds. 95. I missed 95. So I apologize for doing this on the fly. I should have had this figured out. But you would have 31, 55, 63, 66, 95, and 133. All of those 6 picks in the first 4 rounds of the draft. Now, you also then have a hole to fill at the offensive guard position. Maybe. You've got a lot of offensive linemen. You have 2 guys who are drafted at tackle that haven't quite cut it as tackle, but they've been pretty close. Kingsley Suamataia looked pretty good in week 1 last year, and Wanya Morris held down the fort, maybe not exceedingly well, but well enough at times. You're telling me that those guys can almost cut it at left tackle, but they can't cut it at right guard? But if you wanted to replace Trey Smith through the draft, knowing that, okay, so I'm not a big fan of trading a player for an asset because that trading a player for a draft pick because that draft pick then has to be used to replace the player. But in this situation, if you do that and you gotta hit, you're getting a player that's younger and you're getting a player that you have for 4 years on a rookie contract at a position of need where the Chiefs had been lopsided in their pay scale, the left side being Joe Thuney at $20 million plus, the right side being Trey Smith on a 6th round rookie deal. So Tyler Booker is the 48th overall rated prospect by PFF. 6'5", 325 pounds. Booker has some foot speed and balance issues that keep him from being a blue chip prospect. That kind of sounds like Trey Smith, doesn't it? But there is still a lot to like as a powerful, well-built, competitive, and high football IQ prospect for a man gap-heavy run scheme. That sounds an awful lot like Trey Smith. So we'll just say 48th overall. Leading up to the 48th pick, you have the 31st pick, and you would have the 51st pick or 55th pick in the second round. There's also Tate Ratledge, 6'6", 320 pounds, out of Georgia, a little bit older, at 23.9 years old as a rookie. Ratledge isn't the most dynamic athlete, but his solid pass blocking technique and downhill power in the run game give him a chance to be a starter in the NFL. So those are both guys that I think could come in and perform admirably at that right guard spot. But maybe you don't have to replace him. Maybe you think that Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia can both start at those offensive guard positions. I think that is very, very possible. You also have Hunter Nourzad on the roster. You also have several guys in that guard type, center type mold. And I think that between really the four guys that you've got there, I think you've got at least two that could be on the field. I really think Kingsley could be an elite offensive guard. Didn't look like it at times, I understand, with the whole how he ended the season at left tackle. But I do think he could be an elite offensive guard. So you could have one of those spots between the trade and, well, both trades, if you're trading away both of your offensive guards. You could have one of those spots taken care of with Kingsley. I think you could have one of them taken care of with Wanya as well, but I really do think Wanya could be an offensive tackle still. So that could be what happens at offensive guard. So you could be in position to draft starters. Look, you have to hit, right? And the Chiefs don't always hit, but they hit at a large enough rate, at a good enough rate, that I would trust them to try to do this. You have 31, 55, 63, and 66, those four picks that really you're kind of expected to hit starters at. 95 is on the fringe. That's, you could probably get a starter here. And then 133, depending on the position. If you're talking about a running back, you can hit a running back at 133. You can hit an offensive guard at 133 that comes in and starts. You can hit a safety at 133 that comes in and starts. You can hit a linebacker at 133 that comes in and starts. So you could be looking at 6 guys that could come in and have definitive shots at starting for a football team. But guys, the Chiefs really do have quite a few starters. Maybe some of them aren't the best. Maybe some of them you really would prefer to replace. Maybe a couple of them are getting older, though when was the last time we saw a Kansas City Chief retire? I mean, just think about that. But here's another thing that you could do. You have 6 picks in 4 rounds. All of a sudden, you can get very aggressive in that first round. You can get very, very aggressive in that first round. You package 31, 55, and 66. How far can you move up doing that? A first and 2 seconds. How high in this draft can you get with that package? I don't know. But you know who would? Brett Veach, because he would have placed all of those calls beforehand. He would know, and he would be looking at that draft board as each player falls, and he'd be saying, look, we can get up to 10. we got to trade 31, 55, and 66. We can get up to 15. We have to trade 31, 55, and 133. What are the deals that have to be made? I don't want to trade Trey Smith. I don't know that Brett Veach wants a guy on the tag. We saw him last year, tag L'Jarius Sneed, only to move on from him. I think, unfortunately, that might be what is in the cards again for the Kansas City Chiefs, unless we hear of a long-term deal getting made for Trey Smith. And another thing to keep in mind, Trey Smith would have gotten buku bucks to leave Kansas City this year. It's likely Trey Smith, whenever he does leave, should the Kansas City Chiefs not be particularly active in free agency, he would yield probably a third-round compensatory pick. I would believe a third-round compensatory pick. So the Chiefs, in order to trade him, would need to get a premium over a third-round pick. Because just letting him walk out the door, they would get a third-round pick. That third-round pick would be delayed a year, but it would happen. So I don't know that any of these situations play out, that they will trade Jaylen Watson or they will trade Trey Smith. I just thought that it was an interesting scenario to throw out there and see what you guys thought. Anyways, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and hope to have you back for the next one.